we're gonna simplify square roots. To simplify square roots, we're gonna use prime numbers. Prime numbers are numbers that you can divide by themselves and 1. For example, number 2. Number 2, you can divide it by 2 and 1. Same thing happens to number 3. You can divide it only by itself and 1. Same thing happens to number 5, 7, 11, and the list is going to continue. It doesn't end. Now, what I want to do is to simplify this square root, I need to rewrite this one. The number outside is 2, and we're just going to state it a square root. Okay, so that means that I need to have a number inside so that that number will be a number to the second power. Okay, so we need a number. Those numbers, by the way, should be perfect squares. Anyway, to do that, I have to find the prime factorization. So that means I'm gonna rewrite 50 and I'm gonna divide this by 2. I always like to start with the smallest number. Divided by 2, the answer should be 25. Now, I'm not gonna be able to divide by 2, but I can divide by 5, and the answer should be 5. This is the answer. The answer should be all these prime numbers. 5 times 5, you get 25, times 2, the answer is 50. And you can see the 5 squared. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to rewrite 50 as a product of two numbers. And you can see this will be 5 squared. That's what I wanted to have. A number to the second power, and then times 2. The reason why I needed to have this as a number to the second power is because if I can divide this number 2, if I can divide the exponent by this number, then this number 5 is going to be outside the square root. The reason is they cancel each other out. So on that case, 2 divided by 2, you get 5 to the first power. Okay? But because the exponent is 1, we're never going to write the 1. So that means that I'm going to get only 5. And can you see that the exponent for number 2, you don't see it, right? So the exponent should be 1. And now, if this number 2 doesn't divide 1, because it doesn't divide 1, this number 2 is going to stay inside the square root. So that means that the answer should be 5 times a square root of 2. Okay? Now, let's do the same thing with the next number. The next number is 90. And I'm going to rewrite it, 90. And I need to find the product of two numbers. And I hope that one of those numbers should be a number to the second power. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by dividing this by 2. I'm going to get 45. 45, I can divide it by 3. So what I'm going to get is going to be 15. Look at the list, right? And I'm going to divide this by 3. And then the answer should be 5. So the prime numbers, okay, should be the answer. The answer should be 5 times 3, that would be 15, times 3, 45, times 2 would be 90. Now, I'm going to rewrite all these numbers. And can you see, by the way, that I have 3 to the second power? So that's what I wanted to have. 3 to the second power times, that would be 2 times 5. It doesn't have to be in order, but I'm going to write 3 squared here because I should be able to divide this exponent by 2. Okay, now can you see that number 2? You don't have the exponent. The exponent is going to be 1. Same thing for 5. Now, if you can divide by 2, You see how we can divide this by 2? That means that this 2 divided by 2, you're going to get 3 to the first power. So that's how this is going to cancel. This square is going to be canceled by the square root because you were able to divide it. So you get 3 to the first power. So because the exponent is 1, we're never going to write the 1. Can you see that 2 doesn't divide 1? Right? Because it doesn't divide 1, this number 2 is going to stay inside the square root. Same thing happens with this exponent. 2 doesn't divide 1. So this number 5 is going to stay inside the square root. This is multiplication. So then the answer should be 3. And you multiply the two numbers inside. 5 times 2, that would be 10. So that would be the answer. Let's do the next one. Okay. So one more time. We say square root because the number outside is 2. If this number is 3, then we're going to say cube root. Or if this number is 4, then we're going to say fourth root. But whenever you use the square root, we're just going to state it. We're never going to write it unless we're going to change that to another number like 3. Then we're going to say cube root. Okay? Well, on this case, it's going to be a square root. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite 27. And 27, I can divide it by 3. So the answer should be 3. 9, I mean. And now, number 9, I'm going to divide it by 3. So the answer is 3. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to double check my answer. This is the answer. All the prime numbers. 3 times 3, that would be 9 times 3, that would be 7. Now, the way how I'm going to write the answer is by making sure that I have an exponent that I can divide by 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 of them, okay? And I'm going to write 3 squared and then times 3 times that one, okay? And the reason why I want to write it that way is because the number outside is 2. And if I can divide this exponent by 2, then the square is going to cancel the square root. And this number 3, this one, is going to be outside the square root because they both cancel each other. When you divide 2 divided by 2, you get 1. But we're never going to write the 1. Okay? And now, can you see that this number 3, the exponent should be 1? And 2 doesn't divide 1. So this other number 3 is going to stay inside the square root. And that's how we're going to get the answer. This will be the answer. This means that 3 multiplies the square root of 3. Let's do the next one. Okay. So in this case, we have 180. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 2. I'm going to get 90. 90 divided by 2. I'm going to get 45. And 45, I can divide it by 3. I'm going to get 15. But I can still divide by 3. Then the answer should be 5. All these prime numbers is what we call is the answer. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rewrite all these numbers inside the square root so that hopefully I can rewrite them with an exponent. In this case, can you see that you have 2 squared? Okay, 2 squared. And that should be times 3 squared. And then times 5. Another way how you can see it is by counting how many 2's do you have. We have 2 of them. That will be 2 to the second power. You have only 2. 3 squared is because you have only how many 3's? 2 of them. And number 5, you have only 1 of them. Okay. Now, we're gonna be dividing the exponents by 2. If we can divide by 2, then this number should be outside the square root because the square is gonna be canceled by the square root. That's what happens. So if we start dividing, okay, this number 2 divided by 2, you get 2 to the first power. Okay, so this number 2 is going to be outside the square root. The next one, 3 to the second power. This number 2 is divided by 2. That's how you get 3. Okay, but it's going to be multiplication. Okay, very important. Whatever comes out of this square root, once it's outside, they will be multiplying each other. Okay, and then the last one. Can you see that this number 2 doesn't divide 1? Well, because it doesn't divide 1, then number 5 is going to stay inside the square root. So the answer then should be 3 times 2. That would be 6 times a square root of 5. That would be the answer. Okay. Now let's do the last one. That would be 300. And if I divide by 2, I'm going to get 150. One more time, if I divide it by 2, I'm going to get 75. But I can't divide by 2, and the next number should be 3. That's how I get 25. And if I divide it by 5, I'm going to get 5. So the prime factorization is going to be this. Can you see the 5 squared and the 2 squared? That's how I'm going to write it. So I'm going to write it this way. I have 2 squared. And then I have times 5 squared. And then it's going to be times 3, which is this one. And now I'm going to be dividing the exponents by 2. So 2 divided by 2, you get 2 to the first power. Because the exponent is 1, we don't write the 1. Then this number 2 divides 2. That's how you get 5 to the first power. But now the exponent for number 3, you don't see it. Whenever you don't see the exponent, that number should be 1. And 2 doesn't divide 1. So that means that this number 3 is going to stay inside the square root. So then the answer, 5 times 2, that will be 10 times a square root of 3. That's the answer.